House Bill 69, I'd just have you go to the bottom of page 1 on line 14, where it talks about at the very end that we take 28.94 acres held by the Wyoming State Training School, which is the Wyoming Life Resource Center. That's kind of antiquated language, and I'll explain that a little bit. And then on the top of page 2, line 1, we transfer it to the Department of Transportation. The rest are all the meets and bounds, the legal description of the property that's in place. If I could, Mr. Chairman, I would then ask you, I provided you with a handout, and on this one that has you'll see the section there that's kind of painted YDOT orange there that has the 28.94 acres is the property that we're talking about. The property that we're talking about here is considered institutional land, which is a little different than state lands. That it was assigned to at the time, the State Training School, which has since been renamed Life Resource Center. When that facility was created, it was really kind of its own enclosed community. They had an agriculture. They raised beef, hogs, chickens, raised their own produce up through till about the late 70s, when they rechanged there was the Olmsted lawsuit, which required that most people in those institutional settings live in the least restrictive environment. Many of those residents went to community-based services rather than staying in the institution. And over the time, those that stayed there have aged out, passed on. So if you look at that same map, you will see, if you go straight up the map, you'll see kind of a campus there that says Center Street, First Avenue. That's the Life Resource Center campus now. The Department of Health, and then off to the right of that is kind of some green colored land. That's institutional land that's associated with that as well. There's about 300 acres there that's institutional land. So just kind of giving you an idea of where that's at. Then that red line is that highway 789 that goes from Lander to Riverton. Committee, if I could also then ask you to look at the second picture that we have that shows where the Department of Transportation's current shop is at, which is about a mile away from the picture I just showed you. It's right there on the intersection of Lander going to South Pass and going to Riverton. That facility sits on 3 acres. It was built in 1938. To give you an example, the snow plows, the type of trucks that they used in 1939 in that area would be about the same as a 1.5-ton truck today. They can't get a full-sized snow plow in the shop and raise the bed. They can't get 2 of them in. They have 97 pieces of equipment that they would like to store. They can't keep them all in this facility. So they keep some out in a rural area where they have a gravel pit. The Department of Transportation has been working really in earnest since 2007 to find a place that they could relocate their facilities. One of the challenges in that area is finding some place that has utilities, meaning particularly water, sewer. Electricity is not hard, but water and sewer was difficult to come by. Up on this property that we've located at the Life Resource Center, there is water and sewer that connects the Life Resource Center campus, and then the Central Wyoming College has a facility up there as well. One of the other important needs for YDOT is that it has to be an easy access off the highway and then onto the highway and not be off the highway too far. So the highway, as you look at it, that comes down and then would turn into Enterprise is a 4-lane highway. There's easy. It's doesn't interrupt traffic as they're pulling off and wouldn't interrupt traffic as they pull on to the highway. The and so really, I guess, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to hope that brief explanation makes sense, and happy to try and fill in the gaps if there are questions from the committee.
So just so I understand this, Representative Larson, this is just going to the Department of Transportation. There's nothing to do with housing or anything like that in this bill. Did it sort of start out that way, or? Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'd go back to this first one,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see some tan colored parcels in there that equate to about 90 acres. The introduced version of the bill, the city of Lander has been trying to find a place to do additional housing and ask if we could likewise transfer some of this, because it's not school land, it's just institutional land. There's not revenue that comes back. If that would be a possibility, the House side felt like they ought to go through the Board of Land Commissioners, or that you could identify in legislation perhaps transferring property for housing, but then have it come up to for a price, do the appraisal and then do purchase. So that property was removed, and so in this bill, in the engrossed version, it's just that 28.94 acres, that 28.94 acres, and it goes to the Department of Transportation. And again, so when we reached out, when we identified the property and met with the Department of Health to inquire if there's any future plans, would there ever be, they indicated that this wouldn't impose upon any future plans that they have. Then the question is, what's the quickest and the most streamlined way to transfer this over to the Department of Transportation? And we just kind of followed OSLI's recommendation that the quickest way would be through a bill.
Okay. And just to follow up to that real quick, so this is primarily for DOT's small spot. It's a bigger area for them to have some extra room to move. Is that kind of the crux of it?
It is. They've got 3 acres, and it's kind of right there. It's just, since 1930, the town's kind of encroached around it, and it's difficult to get in, difficult to get out. Can't store all their equipment there. They've, built in 1939. They currently try to find a site to where they can put their driver's license, their maintenance, and everything in one location like they do around the rest of the state. Generally try to take from 25 to 30 acres of space. So that's why we ended up with the acreage we did, and they were shooting for around 30 acres, and just as it outlined and done their final assessment, it ended up the 28.94.
Great. Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you said that this land was institutional land that, did you say in 1970 they stopped using it for production agriculture, or is that when that ended, or is it still in production? Or
Mr. Chairman, if I may, so in the 70s, well, up through the 70s, there's a time that what was known as the Wyoming State Training School had 300 residents. And it was really an institutional setting that was isolated completely away from the city of Lander, and it was just self-contained. And so they, when it was put into place, turn of the century, they raised their own livestock, raised their own egg, raised their own chicken, raised their own everything. And then as our society has changed and more of those people with developmental and intellectual disabilities are live longer and live outside institutional settings, the need for those additional acreage for agriculture production wasn't needed. The Department of Corrections, the Honor Farm in Riverton has cattle production, and I think they have for, I think since Moses left Omaha, used these lands that the Life Resource didn't to run their cattle on for parts of the year. They irrigate it, they do this. This would be pulling that out of that agricultural piece. It's pasture is what it is.
Go ahead.
Thank you,
Senator.
Mr. Chairman. Okay, so currently it is being used by somebody for agricultural
Yeah,
purposes.
the Honor Farm leases it from the Department of Health. And as I mentioned, there's about 300 acres there in total.
Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So all of these other parcels around this piece that you're talking about are still being used by the Honor Farm? And also I would like to know how does that organization feel about this transfer?
In conversations I've had, so this, Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Sure. No, you're good.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pearson, this conversation has gone on for about 4 years now on where to do that. In conversations with the Department of Corrections has basically that this is the Department of Health's land. We're just the lessee, we use it, in removing 25 to 100 acres doesn't bother them. They use what they use what they use. They have some, now if you'll also notice here, there's a blue piece, that's a school section that they also use. So there's a, but that's separate from the institutional lands.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions from the committee? Thank you for your testimony
Thank
this
you.
morning. I don't know if there's anybody else would like to testify on this morning. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us who you're with.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Keith Fulton, Chief Engineer for the Wyoming Department of Transportation. This is a location, as mentioned by the good representative, that we are very undersized for both staff and equipment. And this fits the bill for us on the size we'd like to have. It allows us to bring our highway patrol and our driver's license who are leasing land in land or elsewhere into one place. And so this land will be good for us. We'll be able to plan for the future.
Okay.
And I would take any questions.
Questions from the committee? Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right, well, thank you, Representative Larson. Does anybody want to move the bill? Seeing no further, go ahead, Barry.
Move the bill, unless there's further public comment.
It's been moved by Senator Crago. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Laura Pearson. Discussion. Proceed to vote. Roll call.
This is a roll call vote for House Bill 69. Senator Crago,
Aye.
Senator Love,
Absent.
He's presenting the bill across the
Oh, he is. You call him excused. I didn't
Excused.
know he's doing a bill across the hall.
Senator McEwen,
Aye.
Senator Pearson,
Aye.
Chairman Ide.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that is 4 aye and 1 excused.
Yeah. All right, we're done with House Bill 69, we'll move on to House Bill 98, Prohibit Red Flag Gun Seizure Act Penalty Amendments. Whoever's ready, Representative Harrelson. You got the table.
Thank you, committee, and thank you for hearing this morning. Today, I'm going to be presenting House Bill 98. And House Bill 98 is the Prohibiting Red Flag Gun Seizure Act. It's a very simple correction or amendment to our current statutes. We have red flag seizure statutes already in place. This is simply adding in a criminal provision to it. So we have a civil provision already in statute. This is adding the criminal provision. You see that in 9-14-303, Section D, and it states any person who knowingly violates any provision of this act is guilty of a misdemeanor punishable by imprisonment not more than 1 year and a fine of not more than $2,000 or both. And this would align our statutes that we have with other firearm provisions as far as protection of our Second Amendment right. This just brings in that double action where there is a criminal penalty as well as a civil provision in statute. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Obviously takes effect July 21st, 2026 if it were to be passed into law. And with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning,
Morning.
Representative.
How are you?
Would you remind me, and this might be a good question for someone else out there too. I remember we talked about this previously when we were working the bill, the original bill that we did that. Can you remind us all why we did not include this? I remember having the discussion, but since it's your topic, just refresh my memory because I'm having a hard time making all the buttons click this morning of why we didn't include this, because I remember we talked about it.
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you very much, Chairman and Senator Crago. So from what I remembered in that, the original conversation was with the civil suit option. There was recourse for the firearms owner who felt that they had their Second Amendment rights breached. And as we've kind of walked through this litany of conversations on protection of the Second Amendment, there has become this idea that there should be both the criminal and the civil. And so now we're beginning to see that coming in with others, like the conversation around SAPA, like the conversation around the red gun seizures. And so this puts in there that not only is this an opportunity for civil recourse, there's also an opportunity for a criminal recourse as well. So.
Go ahead, Senator.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I don't disagree with
Yeah.
what you just said. I just remember us having a conversation and it was specific. And I can't remember if we took it out or if it was specifically excluded, and maybe someone else remembers and can help us out with that too, because I'm just trying to remember that conversation. I remember it was actually one of the more controversial parts about this particular issue when we did it, whatever it was last year or the year before. So just trying to remember what the reasoning was, why we didn't include it to begin with.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Craig, we probably will have to call. I didn't run the original legislation, and so I don't fully remember. I do remember the conversation because I do actually believe maybe you and I both were on judiciary at that time when we had that conversation over on the House side. So it might not be a bad idea to bring in kind of some of the original drivers of that bill.
We can phone a friend.
Sounds excellent.
Questions?
Where's the friend?
Well, thank you, Representative Harrelson, for being here this morning. Good to see you. You can hang around here. We'll see if there's other testimony from the gallery here. If anybody wants to speak on House Bill 98, come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. So we all know each other. I'm Mark Jones. I'm a national director with Gun Owners of America. I live in Johnson County, Wyoming. And this is the fifth legislative year that I've worked on some form of this. I do know a lot of the history. And as Representative Harrelson said, this essentially takes the existing civil provisions, and it's important to understand civil versus criminal, civil provisions that a citizens have right now under Wyoming statutes to hire their own attorney and pursue a civil action against the department. That's already in place for red flag gun confiscation orders. This simply makes it clear that that is also, that a red flag gun confiscation order is also a criminal infraction. That's all this does. And I would argue this is already in Wyoming statute. If you go back to statute 9-14-203, which many of you were involved in 2022, the Wyoming legislature placed this penalty in Wyoming statutes for all unconstitutional federal infringements, essentially. A constitutional prosecutor would probably already prosecute under Wyoming statute 9-14-203. However, we all understand that prosecutors are a diverse group of people and sometimes may not be inclined to dig that deep in the statutes and interpret things that way. So this is an attempt to really tighten up protections against red flag gun confiscation orders and make it abundantly clear to everyone so that no one can ignore it, that these are also criminal infractions. For those of you who don't think we need this, let me point out that Gun Owners of America and many other organizations have long said we need both criminal and civil protections. We need both. Not one, we need both. We're involved with people in this state and other states who are trying to pursue a civil route right now, who've had to take second mortgages out on their homes to do that. I'm glad we have civil provisions, but we also need criminal protections to really stop any type of federal gun control pushed on the state of Wyoming. I know right now with the current presidential administration, many people aren't worried about that. Let's fast forward to a Gavin Newsom presidency in 2028 or something similar to that and imagine what things will look like. So again, this really is already probably covered in the statutes, but we all know that all prosecutors might not prosecute. This makes it very clear that a red flag gun confiscation order is a criminal infraction. We've listened to a lot of testimony from law enforcement officials in this session about how they would never want to infringe upon the rights of Wyoming citizens. If that's true, they shouldn't have anything to worry about by putting this in, moving it from one place where it's already in the statutes and also referencing it related to red flags. I'll also point out red flag gun confiscation orders are one of the most egregious forms of gun control or civil rights infringements that exist. They violate the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. And one of the few things I can think of that violate 4 amendments to the Constitution: your due process rights, your rights against unlawful searches and seizures, of course, your Second Amendment rights. So I honestly think this should be non-controversial. This legislature has debated this issue, has passed the 2022 criminal penalty. A couple years later, we passed the civil provisions for red flags. I think this is a fairly common sense. It's one of the shortest bills here. It's 1 page. How many bills have you guys looked at since you've been here this session? It's 1 page. Very simple. Honestly, it's not controversial. We shouldn't make it such. And I should also point out my friend and colleague, Brian Gosh with the National Rifle Association, gave me permission in writing to speak on his behalf. They supported this bill in the other house. He's tied up fighting radical gun control in St. Paul, Minnesota today, and wanted me to speak on his behalf and tell you that the NRA supports this legislation too. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, sir. Questions? Senator Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm not trying to make this controversial either, Mr. Jones. I just figure we might get this question when we get to the floor. And so I was just trying to have a little background so that the 5 of us could explain it if we're asked, or whoever's running the bill on the floor, we could back them up, I guess. That's what I'm just trying to get the history, because I know we had that conversation and I don't remember why. I just figured you probably would. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out, is why we didn't just stick that in to begin with. So if you could help us with that, that'd be super great. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Crago. That's a great question, and there's no one answer to that. This is at least the 5th year that I've been involved in this body debating this issue, and there have been more answers to your question than you can count on your fingers and toes. it kind of depends on who you're talking to. Some legislators don't like this for some reason. Some do. We've obviously seen majorities change, leadership change. I think the overall tone of the current House and Senate is more favorable toward this than in the past. I think it passed the House by a 90-some% rate. I forget the exact vote. And so I think it's much less controversial than it was in the past. I think also, I'll be frank with you, I don't think many legislators understand this. I don't think they understand the difference in a civil process and a criminal process. And this probably goes back to the original SEPA debates from 2021, 22, 23. Honestly, I don't think 90% of the legislature understood the difference in a citizen having to go hire their own attorney, go to civil court, sue, get standing in front of an appointed judge, et cetera, and a criminal process enforced by county prosecutors. I think now there's a lot more knowledge about that in both houses of, the Senate and House. I think a lot more people are beginning to understand it. And I think if you lay it out clearly the way I just did, this is already in one criminal statute, can already be enforced by a good constitutional prosecutor. And we're just trying to tighten everything up to protect our citizens. And all our law enforcement officials say they're not going to do this anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Other questions from the committee? Thank you, Mr. Jones. I'll
Thank you,
just add, I tend to concur with Senator Craigo on getting a little more backdrop, just so if we get peppered with questions, we have a little thorough answer, I guess. But yeah, I like robust penalties on infringements on constitutional rights. So thank you for being here
Well,
today.
thank you, committee.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Happy to answer any questions anytime.
Okay. Others from the gallery that want to testify? Anybody online? Oh, go ahead. We got one more. Introduce yourself, sir, and tell us who you're with. We know, but we'll ask you anyway.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. Along the course of my career, I ended up spending about 6 or 7 years in the Pentagon. And I saw how bureaucracies work up close and personal, all their inner workings and hidden mechanisms. And you just heard a little bit of testimony about civil process versus criminal process. And what you're hearing there is what amounts to lawfare, where people can use the law against you financially. The real thing is you look at this process, the civil process, bureaucracies have this way of nibbling around the edges of something like the Second Amendment. And that in turn is very tough for a private citizen to take on. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winnie. Any questions for Mr. Winnie? Thank you, sir. Others in the audience? Go ahead, Representative. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Craigo, as I'm looking at it, the original would have been 2024-109. There was never a criminal penalty in it. So it was always civil. I think we may have had conversation on it, but it was never actually an amendment that was put in, nor a conversation as I've looked through the amendments in the original bill by Senator Beitman. It was always just a civil penalty clause. No criminal was ever in the original text, nor in the Enrolled Act, nor was there an amendment passed on it as I've looked at the amendments.
Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for
Yeah.
looking that up. That's how I remember it as well. But I think there was discussion and there might have been disagreement between a couple of the different groups on whether we should or should not add the criminal penalty.
And
And if I remember serving with you, I think that was the conversation was, should we add it? Should we not? We decided not to. I just couldn't remember the rationale for not at the time or for at the time. I know we're going to get asked this when we get to the floor. I'm just trying to round up as much information as possible. Someone's going to want to know that answer because we don't know is probably not going to work. So
Mr. Chairman and,
Go ahead.
and Senator Craig, I'll go back and do some looking at some videos on that, see if I can try to dig that up. Maybe see if I can get a little bit of a clarity on that conversation, because I do believe it happened in our Judiciary Committee on the House side, from what I remember. And so I'll dig into that. But I mean, we can go back and say this was never a part of the original 2024 legislation. I mean, because that is truth. I mean, in the introduced version as well as the enrolled act, it never had anything beyond a civil conversation.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Go
just
ahead.
wanted to thank the representative for, I mean, that's at least helpful. I mean, that gives us some information we can talk about, but I just don't really, like I said, I don't remember the conversation on the back and forth that we had, but we can, between the two of us, I bet we can figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Been moved by Senator McEwen, seconded by Senator Love. Discussion? No discussion? I'll just say I think putting some teeth into it is a good thing from my vantage point, at least. Makes it people think twice or thrice or more than that before they try to steal your constitutional rights. So go ahead and take roll call. Clayton?
This is a roll call vote for House Bill 98. Senator Craigo. Aye. Senator Love.
Aye.
Senator McEwen.
Aye.
Senator Pearson.
Aye.
Chairman Ide.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that is 5 ayes.
Okay. Committee, I guess that's all we have today. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you.